Well, it's that time of the week when we go out to California and we check out what's happening with the movies, and we check in with Michael Snyder, who's right here, right now. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Alex, and hello, everybody out there in GABNet land. And, it's another week in movie land, and let's start with the fact that Tyler Perry's A Madea Family Funeral opens today. Featuring the cross-dressed Tyler Perry as plump, overbearing matriarch Madea in yet another moralistic mix of lowbrow comedy and... wait a minute. They didn't preview it for the likes of me. Is it wrong to hope that the funeral is Medea's? Okay. Let's move on to what I saw. Greta kicks things off. I'm not going to say that Irish writer-director Neil Jordan was slumming when he made Greta, which is a tidy little stalker horror movie, although I suppose I could, because this is the guy who wrote and directed memorable and powerful feature films like Mona Lisa, The Crying Game, and Michael Collins. He directed Interview with a Vampire. He produced for TV The Borgias. I'm not going to vilify one of the grand dames of French cinema either. Isabelle Huppert is in this thing. I mean, she's still getting it done despite being a woman of a certain age. But here she plays Greta, a creepy older woman who latches on to a young waitress in New York City, and who could be a harmless, needy person, or she could be a genuine threat. And it doesn't hurt to have Chloe Grace Moretz playing Frances, the naive, kind-hearted object of the oddball woman's interest. Also nice to see Irish actor and a Neil Jordan favorite, Stephen Ray, in a small but significant role. Ultimately, I enjoyed it in all its creepiness. Huppert, as usual, gives a complex performance with more going on than one usually expects from the sort of character she's playing here. It's a lesser work from Jordan, but he's one of my favorite directors, and I thought it was a cut above the usual attempt at one of these lean and stark thrillers. Yeah, there are standard tropes. Nonetheless, is Greta lonely or is she loony? I mean, it's obvious that this is the sort of film we're looking at here, but find out for yourself if you like this kind of movie, because I certainly do. Okay, moving on. Speaking of French treasures, one of the most daring and experimental of the latest wave of French filmmakers is Gaspar Noé, the guy behind the shocking and disturbing movie Irreversible and the totally hallucinogenic film Into the Void. His latest effort is Climax, and here he manages to be both unsettling and trippy. It starts off as what appears to be a documentary-style look at a multi-culti modern dance troupe as the members rehearse for a major upcoming performance on a winter night in an empty school building. The EDM score kicks ass, and the dancing is first-rate, beautifully choreographed and shot. I mean, it's the first 15, 20 minutes, thrilling dance. Okay. They wrap up this great rehearsal, kick back, and start to party with all the affection and the rivalry and sexual tension you got to expect in such a crowd. But somebody has dosed the sangria with acid, and all hell breaks loose. The results are like can't tear your eyes away, compelling. I mean, outstanding staging and cinematography. The one performer who might be familiar to American audiences is Sofia Boutella, who plays one of the central dancers. Paradoxically, she played the legless assassin in the first Kingsman movie and a deadly character in Atomic Blonde, but Climax gives her a chance to show off more of her range. Everybody in the ensemble is impressively agile and painfully real as the chaos plays out. Note, Climax is not a feel-good movie, but it's a remarkable exploration of the depths of human dysfunction, strength, and fragility, and the boundaries of narrative filmmaking from Gaspar Noé. Third in line here today is Apollo 11. I was not too impressed with the stately, almost dull grandeur of Damien Chazelle's First Man, the recent docudrama about Neil Armstrong and the historic Apollo 11 moon landing in 1969. The new documentary, Apollo 11, playing in IMAX theaters, is a whole nother story. It is the most you are there presentation of spaceflight that I have ever seen, with hours of beautifully preserved archival film, some of it never before released to the public, showing the preparation, the execution, and the aftermath of the Apollo 11 mission, expertly edited down to 93 absolutely riveting minutes. It's hard to believe that this happened 50 years ago. Nonetheless, Apollo 11 is a celebration that, thanks to the vivid footage, is like a "you are there" time portal to this most amazing feat in human history. Despite the compact running time, I mean, it's detailed and even educational about the achievement and its worldwide impact. Even without the scripted drama, Armstrong and his fellow mission astronauts Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins come off as more vivid and heroic than they do in First Man. And by the way, this is not the same Michael Collins as the title character in Neil Jordan's movie. Apollo 11, amazing. Let's wrap up with Mapplethorpe. I've always been fascinated by the New York City art rock scene, the Velvet Underground, Andy Warhol, the Factory, as well as how all that impacted the eventual rise of punk rock in mid-70s Lower Manhattan. So I was very interested in seeing Mapplethorpe, a biopic starring none other than Matt Smith. That's right, the 11th Doctor on Doctor Who, Prince Philip on The Crown, as the bad boy photographer Robert Mapplethorpe, who would live with Patti Smith in the Chelsea Hotel during the early 70s, thrust himself into the gay BDSM subculture, and go on to become one of the boldest artists of the American underground. Mapplethorpe's oeuvre ranged from flowers to thoroughly explicit gay erotica, and his notoriety in art circles would eventually bring him palpable fame, success, and mainstream work, shooting portraits of renowned fellow artists, musicians, writers, and celebrities, until his untimely death from AIDS in 1989 at the age of 42. Considering the scene and the story, I expected more than the movie produced. It was sort of boilerplate, as these things go, even mundane. It wasn't Smith's fault, although he wasn't helped by a couple of dodgy wigs that changed from scene to scene in the early part of the movie. He gives a solid performance, tentative, then passionate, then inscrutable, then damaged and cold, then pained, undaunted. It's the writing and the flat direction that really let him down. And I never bought that actress Marianne Rendon was Patti Smith for a second. Though I like some of the way the movie was shot to look like Super 8 here and there, newsreel footage, there were a few distracting anachronisms, and I was really disappointed because the director and co-screenwriter, Andy Timiner, directed the award-winning rock documentary Dig. If you're as interested in Mapplethorpe's story as I was, wait for video on this one. Smith makes it worthwhile, but prepare to be underwhelmed. What are you watching, Mr. Bennett?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Are you following the Orville at all?
Yeah, I've been following it from last year. I love that show.
I can't believe how good it got in the past few weeks. Really good.
It's been
really
good. It's been good for quite a while. I thought it's a very good show. It's a very, very good show.
You're a Star Trek fan. The past couple of weeks have been the Orville's best of both worlds, a real jaw dropper. Yeah. Anyway, that's it.
And if you're a fan of Star Trek, the current Star Trek Discovery is really a disappointment this year. So
yeah, except for Anson Mount, who I really love as the captain. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's really very lightweight. Yeah, quickly, what'd you think of the Oscars?
I thought that it was okay. I just don't care about these things so much. I really want to say, hey, these 10 movies are great. Go see them. I don't want to have them competing against one another. That said, I thought it was interesting that they gave Olivia Colman the Oscar over Glenn Close because of Close's body of work. Yeah. As good as Colman is, hard to say. She was like co-lead in The Favorite, not really the lead actress. And, I thought that giving Green Book the big Oscar over Roma was sort of a stretch, but it was the sort of film that the Academy has always loved, and felt like they were being inclusive.
It's a very good film. I was very happy with it. I would have been happy if Roma won. I was happy that Green Book won. And I thought that the no host thing worked beautifully. And in fact, the actual host of the show was an old woman I used to date, Randy Thomas, who was the announcer on the show. She really was the host.
Yeah, as close as you can get. And it was nice having her on screen, by the way, during some of the post-show wrap-up. They gave her props, which I thought was really nice. And ultimately, I wouldn't have minded if the girls from Saturday Night Live were de facto hosts. But, you're right. It worked. So maybe they should stick with it. I'd hate to see them try to shoehorn a Kevin Hart in there again.
Okay, give it a go to where we can find you, Michael.
Okay. I'm on Twitter at Culture Blaster and on Facebook at Michael Snyder's Culture Blast page. Check me out here on GABNet.
And if you're listening to us on the network feed, there's more GABNet coming right up. And if not, well, fuck you. See you next week, Michael.